Hello, St. Thomas Academy, and welcome to the Cadet Football Show. I'm your host, Mike Maxwell, and to my left, as always, is our head football coach, Travis Walch. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Well, Coach, congratulations on another good win. This is kind of becoming a thing, which is great. A very rainy, windy night at Jerry Brown Stadium, but you come away with a 40-7 victory over Hastings. Give us your thoughts on the game.
You always want one of those games a year. I mean, you don't want them, but it's nice to have one. You don't want them in back-to-back home games. You know, you're always thinking throughout the week, what are the conditions going to be like? Are we going to kick? Are we going to receive? How is this going to play into our special teams and everything else? The one thing we asked of our guys is just say, we can't let the expectation of bad weather set how we're going to play and let that drift into your mind.
Right. Yeah.
I told him it's a lot like, you know, I hear, oh, you're playing a rival, right? It's going to be a close game. And I always said, well, why does it have to be a close game? Are we setting in motion the idea that it has to be a close game? So what I kind of laid out for our defense and our offense is our job is to protect the ball. And I'm not going to excuse the fact that we let a couple get through our hands in the pass game. But what I was really happy about is we didn't have a center exchange fumble in which they had multiple, nor did we have a running back to quarterback exchange issue in the first half. And those are some of the things I took away from it, saying, okay, they drew to that message of we don't have to be sloppy with the ball just because it's wet. Now, I do understand that ball went through our hands twice, but we were able to do some things in defense where we were able to secure ball in wet conditions. So, yeah, there's no doubt that was kind of the theme of the night. Overall, I was happy with the way our kids came out. And I thought early on there was a fumble situation backed up where I really thought we had possessed the ball, and I think it could have been 14-0 really, really fast. But
for sure,
officials, you know, they're doing the best they can out there, and it was one of those that didn't go our way.
Yeah, well, they don't have the benefit of instant replay.
No, they don't, so, and we do,
so
right?
It's you know, they're human, and we'll make the call based on what they see. So, you know, I thought the defense was solid. You know, a really tough night for Hastings. They just could not get any rhythm going. But do you feel like your defense is really starting to gel and play as a unit?
Yeah, I reflected back with an alum this week on walking into this job in April and starting our practices in the summer and saying, we don't have one defensive starter back. And I thought back, and I remember sitting and talking, like, how are we going to do this? So, yeah, this isn't like our offense where some of these guys have played together for almost a year and a half now, going on 2 years. This is a group that we put together in June. We had a lot of things move by the time we got to the start of the season, and we've had even more movement in season, but I've been really happy with our defensive staff's choices in personnel, and you have to have scheme that fits your personnel. And I think part of this goes all the way back to Andover week and just figuring out what our identity is. It doesn't happen in 1 week. It takes a lot of time to figure out who can and who can't do what, especially we have 5 of the 7 coaches on defense that were not on our varsity staff. So probably easier for our offensive guys to identify than our defense. And I think that's why you're seeing a higher rate of growth with our defense, and maybe you're just going, well, this just kind of seems like what we've always done on offense, you know. But I think that's part of it.
Right. You know what I enjoy seeing is you've got a lot of guys rotating through, and I think that can throw an offense off as well, because you're not seeing the same guys play after play after play, and I think it bodes well for when you come playoff time, because you've got some depth that most teams just don't have.
2 things that stand out in what you said. One is it's important that no matter the game, you can look next to you and go, I've played in scenarios with that guy before, be it in front of you, be it in back of you. The other thing that I think you bring up a good point of is, I'll take a situation like nose guard right now. You got Avon Dorville, who it can really move people and actually has a lot of quickness, and he's been just hustling and running to the football. And then all of a sudden you throw in Cody Packer, who's more of a little pluggy fullback. And for a center in a series to go, I just went against Avon, but now I've got this change up in Cody, you tend to be able to do that a little bit more on defense. Now, how you do that on offense is you say, well, you have different personnel groups. And now you got to go against Chase Young and Teddy Knapp, but now here comes a fullback at you. Next thing you know, now there's Ari and Nico coming at you. So I guess it's our version and our way. What you're saying of is to have personnel groups on defense. And to give them a different tempo, a different speed, a different toughness, a different fit.
Yeah. I love that. So offensively, after a bit of a slow first quarter, I think just getting used to the conditions and all of that, the offense really opened things up in that second quarter. 20 points, that really, of course, to put the game out of reach at that point. As we head into the final game of the season, are you comfortable with your team's grasp of the offense?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we're doing a lot, and I'll go back to, again, when I referenced some of the toughest moment we have this year was sitting in this room and saying, who are we after Andover? And I think, if I remember right, I said something to the point of, my biggest concern always is having too much. It's never going to be we don't have enough. I mean, believe me, we've had a whole season to put things together. It's just really easy to go, well, what if we need this extra thing? We might. But could those 5 reps be better served in a game week for stuff that we're already doing to fine tune? And I'll tell you, we identified things each week that we need to get better on. And so I'll give you an example here. And part of this plays into one of our players of the week. We've been working so hard on just fielding a punt, right? The benefits of fielding a punt. And I know people, how hard can it be? It can be really hard. I've done it. Especially if you're throwing in rain and a 20-mile-an-hour wind. And little things I'm starting to see that we're getting done is happening across this football team. And those little things stack up to really big things over time. And to me, that is what I'm thinking about our offense right now, is we're now finishing downfield. We're getting to the point of attack. Savion has less guys to make miss. Nico had, once he cleared the other night, there was no one chasing him down because we were at level 3. And those are all these little things that we were not doing that are slowly starting to build up. And that is football. That is football, and it's having an offense, defense, and special teams. So these little wins that just keep building up. And as we talked about last week, maintaining them and being able to say we can emphasize this but still not lose that because now we've done it long enough. That remains the challenge week in and week out.
So in that vein, though, are there some new things that you're looking at adding as you get beyond this week and into the playoffs?
Very little adds. We talked to both of the staffs last night. There was one thing we identified on defense, and we said clearly we're going to need this specifically for a quarterback that can throw it, a wide receiver that can get open, and an offensive line that can protect better maybe than what we've been seeing. Mm-hmm. We identified one other thing we need scheme-wise. Offensively, scheme is not going to change that much more. Where we can present to be a lot tougher for teams is, are we doing some more with trade shift motion, which we're still running the same scheme. We're just doctoring some things before we actually run that play. Can we add a formation or two that for everyone across the board doesn't change any? Well, one person might have to line up in a different spot, but how does that change the call for a defense? So no, I don't think our scheme is changing much more. If anything, we're saying, what don't we need anymore? What do we need for the stretch run? And really what it comes down to on offense is, do we have something that can attack every portion of the field, run and pass? Can we attack every gap in the run game? And can we hit every area of the field in the pass game if we need to get to that? We just spent 10 minutes on Saturday, 2 5-minute segments on last play. Last play, offense versus defense from the 40 to the 30. They got 5 of them. How are we going to line up if it's the last play of the game for defense? Where does everyone need to be? I don't like the fact that we only had 3 guys deep. I want 5 guys deep, right? Yep. How are we going to get the ball and protect our quarterbacks long enough to get the ball in the end zone when we know they might want to be bringing pressure, but we have to get the ball to the end zone? And then we did that same thing, 10-yard line and in. So basically think last play of the game, you win or you lose, your season on the line from the 10, 8, 4, 3 down to the 2-point conversion. So our kids know when we get to that situation, this is what we're doing. So a lot of it becomes, I want in our kids' minds now the idea that there is finality. Mm-hmm. This thing can all end in 2 weeks. Right. And you can do that in a sequence of telling them in the meeting room, or you can show them what that means on a field where you say, this is the last play. Either you win or you lose. Right.
Well, as you were talking about that, it reminded me of the Maddaus game in the state playoffs last year, where it came down to overtime where you basically you line it up at the 10 and you go, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of scenario, I think, plays very well. It allows you to prepare for that and be ready for it. Well, it's going to come.
Well, right? I had a coach tell us this year, said in fall camp we did overtime situation. And he said, I've been doing this for 20 years. We've never practiced an overtime situation. Wow. Thankfully, that was something that we always did at places that I've been, and it takes really good head coaches and foresight to go, should the first time we run overtime situation be in a game? Right? I'm not putting anyone down. I'm saying these are the things, when we talk about doing games management in season, these are the things that we're doing with our guys. And I'll take this a step further. I remember we were at the University of St. Thomas, and right before overtime started, our head coach said, hey, which way do we want to go if we get the ball? We had never thought about that. And someone that's actually on our staff here now, who was on our staff then, said, listen, our offense always finishes our practices on this end. We think there's a positive theme to it. Let's do that. Sure. That's when it was decided. Yeah. So things like that is we want to know not only put them in an overtime situation, but what way, if we have a choice, it changes every other possession. Which way do we want to go? Maybe it is wind, or maybe it's just this is where we practice on offense. This is where we've had a lot of good things happen for us. This is where Max hits Dobbs, or this is where Savion, whatever it is. Right. You want all of that because it all plays into the psyche of your guys.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there. So let's just talk a few stats for the night. Nico and Ari combined for over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 each. They continue to provide your offense with just a different look and an alternative to just giving the ball to Savion every time, right?
It's the same thing we just talked about on defense. Like lining up and getting ready to tackle Say is completely different than Ari, and it is completely different than Nico. They all have their different personalities in the way that they run, and that becomes really tough for a corner who's not. Our coaches did a really good job the other night of going, it was clear what Hastings wanted to do. They wanted to load up that box and have their best tacklers or safeties and linebackers tight. And it took us, I always say, it's baseball playoff time right now, and you keep hearing every pitch is so important, right? Every play that we can run on offense to an extended drive gives our coaches more time to figure out how do we get Savion matched up with this corner over here who does not want to tackle. We need time to do that. And just a phenomenal job by Coach Marks and Coach Abbott and Coach Lepshy and the offensive staff of going, we think we just found a way to get Savion matched up on a corner instead of a safety or linebacker in the run game, and that was one of the big plays the other night in which he busted a big one.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, Savion, 268 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's now over 1,400 yards for the season and 21 TDs, so he continues to impress.
He does, but I'm going to tell you, I've talked to Savion this week, and I said, listen, I feel like there's some areas we need to continue to improve on, and we're going to continue to push, and that is what our program's going to. I'm not going to rest on the fact that the numbers say this. Yeah. We're always going to judge our guys. We talked about grading earlier in the year. Yeah, we grade, and I would expect that 286 to also reflect we're doing all the little things well, and he does a lot of little things well. But even for someone like Say, there is something every week when we sit down and film and go, but that could make us just a little bit better.
Yep. Well, and of course, a lot of Savion's success is due to the blocking up front, and so that's you can't lose sight of that either. So, and then just one final thing, Max was only 4 of 11, but had 2 nice TD throws. The rain clearly hampered his ability to control the ball, and of course, you mentioned it before, 2 missed catches that would have kept drives going. Yeah. So, but overall, a great night, I thought, for the boys, and they continue to improve. Let's talk about the MVPs of the game. Scout of the week.
So Nathan Wynn, he's a sophomore running back for us, and one thing our defense identified is our tackling is getting better, still not where we want to be. We're intercepting the football when the ball's in the air, but we've had a really hard time raking the balls out from ball carriers. We always talk about first guy secures, second man come in and try to strip the ball out. So we spent one whole session on Monday, and poor Nathan, and I say this because you get this swarm of people holding you up with just trying to get that ball out. He did it for a whole Monday, and on top of that, when you start saying, okay, you're going to graduate Savion, you're going to graduate Nico, and you're going, well, who can we be a year from now? And you start seeing the Nathan Wins, and you start seeing the Don Baez's, and you go, okay, I can see how they're going to fit into kind of what we're doing. Is it going to be the same player? No. Right. But there can be an identity there, and he's done a lot of things for us in special teams as well, and he's had a really good 10th grade season down there as a running back, and really could kind of be like an Ari, could catch the ball, play some special teams.
Yeah, nice. Always good to have those guys in in your depth. How about the Cadet Award?
Avon Dorville. Could have been MVP defense. You know, every week you're balancing out how to move these different things around. His hustle has been really, really good. And I think at one point I had a conversation with him in the offseason. I'm like, I love what you do on first and second down. And I remember watching the game last year, the last Maddaus game last year. And I watched him go in at some point in like the third quarter and just shuck a guy and throw him, and then I found out he was a sophomore. Right. But the challenge that I continued to push to our whole defense, and Avon has been the center of the hustle to me now as I've watched it over the last 2 weeks, is how do we retrace and get to the ball once we defeat that block? And he has been phenomenal, and he's helping us out on offense right now. We've got him on PAT field goal, so he's just contributing in so many ways. So that's part of the Cadet Award, and then it's just the hustle portion of it and what we expect out of our guys.
You know, those wrestlers, they have a way with moving guys around.
No doubt about it.
Partly built into them. So, all right, let's talk about offensive MVP.
Yeah, Max Sims. There's again, I'm never going to base it off numbers. There's a way in which we want our offense to be led and communicated with. Our tempo's getting better. We're asking more of him by signaling and doing some different things. And outside of, like we talked about the 2 throws, he would have had just a really nice night. And frankly, if it wasn't the monsoon we would have continued to throw more. There's no doubt about it. It was in the plan, and we clearly understand what we need to do in the areas we need to attack. But I brought this up to the team. This is what I was most proud of. I talk about response a lot. He threw a ball, could have been caught. It was going to be a tough catch. Went through someone's hands. And the reaction and the response after that was he gave, say, a little fist bump, kind of like, hey, we got this, we'll be fine, and they jogged off to the field. Right. And those are the little things. We keep these little wins that we're having right now, from a culture standpoint, from a response standpoint, for who we need to be, because there's going to be games. We're probably not going to, it's not going to just be 40-6. Right. Those are the responses and the equity that you need to build. And it needs to come first and foremost from your quarterback. So yes, he threw well. The throws he threw were good. What he had to do to prepare our team to go to the line of scrimmage, again, I will always say any fumbled snap between a quarterback and a center, it's the center's fault, and then I'll go over to the quarterback and tell him it's the quarterback's fault. That's just the way it is. But man, him and Max handled that whole thing really, really well. And you watch the other side of the ball go, it wasn't handled as well, and that was a big difference in the game. And I want everyone to know that's a huge difference in the game.
And one of the things that I'm noticing about Max right now is that he is, you run a lot of tempo, you're running a lot of, you no huddle, and he's doing a great job of not only getting the team to the line, but then taking a little break right before the snap and really executing. And I think that's going to be hugely important.
It's a huge responsibility that very few people really think about how much is on his shoulders. He has to know everyone's job, not just his own job.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's move to defensive MVP.
Yeah, so Sean Happy, and Sean Happ has been really consistent for us. If I say defensively, we need to just be in good leverage. Happ is almost always in a good leverage situation, and he's coming up and tackling right now. He had a nice pick the other night. Again, we could have easily said, well, it slipped through his hands, right? No big deal, it's a rain night. It didn't slip through his hands. He made the play.
Sure did. And
I will say, he also has the challenge of being our holder, which again, the other night, didn't execute the way we wanted to, both in snap, hold, and kick. But it's one of those positions where you go, no one really thinks about who the holder is. And I'll tell you who does think about it is Declan Wilson. I remember Declan Wilson came to me early on and saying, I feel really comfortable with Sean being my holder. That means something to me as a head coach, as a special teams coordinator. So Sean happy just for a lot of the things he does and just his really consistent play on defense.
Good. All right. And then last but not least, special teams.
Luke Dobbs.
Okay.
And again, this is a culmination of also some of the things he's stacking in equity for me in a lot of different areas. But I mentioned it earlier, to catch a punt is not an easy thing to do. To catch a punt when you're on the run, harder. To catch a punt when you're asked to run really fast and wave your hand in the air and catch the ball. Catching a punt when there's people coming down at you. Catching a punt with wind and rain and everything else, and we caught a punt. And then he had one where I think most people would have went, I'm not even going after that one. I love the fact that he went after it. I love the fact that he went to catchable and fieldable after what happened a couple weeks ago. He's mentally tough. He's a competitor. And we are going to praise that. I am going to praise that, and our team will praise that consistently. And I love to see that he made that gamble. I really do. And in the end, I think it's better for us than just taking the easy way out and going, let's let this one roll. I love the fact that he competed.
All right, that's awesome.
And we're seeing it in his blocking and everything else he's doing right now. He is a competitor, and it's been really fun to watch.
Good. That's nice to see. So last Thursday, it was a lot going on beyond the weather, but senior night, which is always a nice night to pay tribute to not only the seniors but their parents who have helped continue the strength of this program. Do you think the seniors, as they come to the end of their football career, most of them at least, how do you think they're grasping that?
I don't know. I think everyone is completely different.
Yeah.
There's parts of me that say I don't want them to, because I think sometimes when you grasp the idea that this could be it, and I don't mean to backtrack on what I was saying earlier about the finality of plays.
Right.
But I remember being a senior and a different weight on my shoulders than being a sophomore and a junior in those last games. So I don't know. I think everyone does it differently.
Right.
I got to tell you, it's the first time I've ever had to do senior day as a head coach. I'm like, do I hug everyone? Do I do the handshake? Like, how does this all work? Then there's flowers involved. Right. So it was completely, I was really not prepared for it. I didn't know quite what to do. And I had a couple, it's just, when you do the awkward handshake where you're not sure if we're hugging or not. And so we just went for it, and we said, we're just going to hug across the board. I just kind of started telling people, hey, the hug's coming. And I could tell maybe there was a dad or two that wasn't real comfortable with the hug, but we went with it. I felt like Roger Goodell up there on draft night, giving the big hug. So I don't know. I'll probably get, awesome. We'll probably have to critique that and figure out where we need to go with that next year. But
all right, that sounds good. So let's switch gears just a bit. Let's give a little update on the lower grade level teams, and kind of some of them are finishing up their seasons, and tell us what's going on there.
Yeah. So the middle school is done. They both won out. It was really cool. We had a huge win at home against St. Anthony for Team White, Coach Lethard's team, and then Team Blue went on the road, Coach Van Plas's team, and won at Benilde in a really tough 14-12 game. So they both ended the year undefeated, and just I guess happy. There was a lot of uncertainty going into it. We didn't quite know.
Yeah.
I can never make a decision and say 100% it's the best one. You just kind of go with where you're at in time and saying this feels like the right decision. And just really thankful for the coaches and the players and the families that were involved with that across the board. I think they handled it really well, and I think it ended up being a really good experience for most of the kids.
Well, and you got to develop a ton of kids. It was like 65 kids in the program. So
by having two teams instead of one, I remember being at a small school in the early 90s, Elgin Millville, and we had to join in my 8th grade year with the team next to us. So the tough thing was joining with your rival. The cool thing was we had 2 quarterbacks, we had 2 running backs, we had 2 O-line. It's just like you had 2 of everything because you're taking 2 complete teams and going, boom. Now the job for me and our staff and the schools to make sure that all those 8th graders that were playing football for us this year on those 2 teams are in blue and white next year in the 9th grade.
Yep, for sure. Any other games last week?
9th and 10th grade both lost games, and 10th grade was on the road. And 9th grade was at home. 9th grade was up most of the game, and they had a big pass play late, and then we went right back down the field and actually had a chance with a Hail Mary. So just happy with the effort, and I love Coach Krieger's doing a great job with that 9th grade, and Coach Mono, and and that crew of just making sure we finish strong. It hasn't always went the way we wanted it this year, but we need to stay on track with finishing strong. It's what our program has to be about.
Yep, for sure. So you got a short week of practice this week because you play on Wednesday. It's MEA week. Does that change your preparation, or is it business as usual?
Yeah, it changes it. I mean, we just had one less day, so I'm thankful that we had a Thursday night game. Yeah. That's something I always wanted to do. I want to have a Thursday night game before our MEA week. So we actually got to have practice on Saturday morning. Took Sunday off. We brought them back Friday, and we just run them, lift them, watch film, flush the bodies. Yep. Come back Saturday, got to practice and got to work on a lot of situational stuff we talked about earlier. Yep. And really, this time it becomes tapering this time of year. So then we say, okay, now we're going to run what would usually be a Wednesday practice today, what would usually be a Thursday practice tomorrow, and then we get ready to roll Wednesday.
All right, that sounds good. So we're on the road. We take on the Chaska Hawks. Yep. They are 3-4, and they've just come off of a loss to the #1 team in 5A, Chan, a 21-0 loss there. So, of course, the last time we played Chaska was in the state championship in 2019. It's a little different team, of course, but what can we expect from the 2023 version of the Hawks?
They remind me a lot of Waconia. I know they actually played in a really close game. Yeah. Defensively, I think they have similar personnel. I'm not going to say, I'll find out after this week who maybe had better personnel, but that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think about the matchup. They played the #1 team in the state last week, really, really tough, and it's a rival on top of it. Yep. I believe they played Mankato West this year. I mean, they've had a really, really tough schedule, and it's a team that has culture and belief, and to your point, 4 years ago, whatever it was, we're playing them in the state championship. So they play football the right way. They want to run the ball. They want to defend the run. I think a lot of people are going to watch this game and go, that is a fun matchup for STA, for us.
Awesome.
And can't wait. Our kids know what's on the line. Yeah. We got a situation to play a team that just played the #1 team in the state. If you want a measuring stick for where you're at right now, it is sitting there in front of us. Yep. And I just have a great amount of respect for Chaska. And I've recruited that school for years, and I've watched the progression from 25 years ago of what was Chaska football to what it is now. Yep. It's impressive. They do it the right way. Yep.
Are there some players that you're concerned about on either side of the ball?
Always. They have a really good defensive front. They've got an outstanding linebacker group. They run a little bit of Wildcat. So they have a quarterback, but then they also have another guy that they can bring in to do some of their Wildcat stuff. I think they're really good on special teams. I like their punter. I think they have two really good return guys. So, and they have a defensive end that is going to be a nice matchup for us. So they remind me, personnel-wise, a lot of us on the front.
Interesting. Okay.
And that's why I'm really excited for our guys to have some really good matchups across the ball. I think that's what you want as a player. Yeah. You want to go out there and go, man, I'm watching this kid on film, and I've got to be really, really good with everything I do.
Yeah, that's good. Should be a fun game and a good test before you head into the playoffs. So you're 6-1. You've rattled off 6 straight victories. You're still on pace to secure that #1 seed, but of course Jefferson and Two Rivers are making things very interesting. They're also 6-1 at this stage. When will the seeding be decided, and what is the process for determining seeds in the section?
So it'll be decided Thursday morning. So after a game, we have each coach has to prep some things, which we're doing now. But then once all the scores are in at the end of Wednesday night, we'll have a 7 a.m. Zoom in which we all kind of present. We rank all the teams that aren't us. So we present something that says, where do we think we deserve to be ranked? But that doesn't end up in the voting. Right. And then when we vote, I would vote then on the top 5 teams in the section. There's 6 in the section. I have to rank the other 5 that I think in order, based on record, based on who they played. Right. And then we find out. And I prepped our team I'm just a big believer. You get so many opportunities, and either you take advantage of that opportunity or you don't. I really don't care who we play, who they played, and all that. For sure. You had an opportunity, and what did you do with it? Yep. And that might not benefit us this year. It may benefit us in the future, but it's how I want our kids thinking. It's not, well, we had 2 losses to better opponents and those teams only had 1. The way I look at it sometimes say, hey, we all had 8 opportunities. What did we do with them? Yeah. And that's the way in my world that I think it's important to think about. Now, you also do have to look at comparative scores, and you have to say, if we played similar opponents, how did they come out? And I'm confident that all the coaches will do that.
Yeah. We've never seen anything nefarious going on there, so I think
I like a lot. I mean, all these coaches I've recruited from years, they've been really good in communicating with this year, and they run just really fun and competitive, and they're just well-run programs with a lot of prideful people, and
that's good. Well, and it'll be fun because the past few years have not been as competitive. So to have a couple of teams that actually can make it interesting, I think is a lot more fun. So
they're just, I said this before, they're harder. 6-1 teams are harder to break than a 2-5 team. They just are. It's harder to get them to quit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Coach, thanks for taking the time to talk a little cadet football. Good luck on Wednesday night.
Thank you.
So our cadets will play the Chaska Hawks on Wednesday evening at Chaska High School. Kickoff is scheduled for 7 p.m. As always, it's recommended you buy your tickets in advance, and we'll have the link below. We're still trying to determine who's going to be broadcasting, if it's us or someone else, but we will provide a link for you also in the comments. In our next show, we'll break down the Chaska game, and we'll look ahead to the section playoffs. Thanks for watching, and go Cadets.